Partly directing for me is trying to create that environment, not just for the actors, but also for all the key department heads in the production.
Ron Howard's story isn't just about movies. It's about survival, resilience, and a quiet storm of life that forges greatness. We've all heard his name. Point for some. It's a red-headed boy. From The Andy Griffith Show. The wholesome Opie, the son we all wish we had. For others, it's Richie Cunningham. From Happy Days. A symbol of innocence. In a time when the world seems simpler. But Ron is so much more than that. He's a visionary director behind iconic films like Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind. But even the brightest stars can't escape the weight of their own history. Behind the accolades of fame, there's a man whose journey is filled with struggles, setbacks, and a painful understanding that sometimes greatness comes at a cost. Imagine growing up in the spotlight before you even have a chance to understand what it means to live without it. Ron was only a toddler when the cameras first found him. Born in Duncan, Oklahoma in 1954, his parents, both working actors, were no strangers to the demands of the entertainment industry. By the time Ron was 18 months old, the world he would know was already a world of studio lights, call sheets, and a constant home of film sets. His childhood wasn't filled with playgrounds and soccer games, but with the undercurrent of a world that moved fast, too fast for a young boy to keep up. His family's moved to California in the mid-1950s brought the promise of a brighter future, but also the pressure often industry that doesn't care who you are. It only cares if you fit the mold. By the age of 6, Ron had already become Opie Taylor, a beloved character on The Andy Griffith Show. But while the world saw him as America's son, Ron saw something else, an isolation that came with fame. His classrooms were often cramped trailers behind the soundstage, where he tried to focus on his schoolwork while the noise of the set filtered in. His friends were colleagues, actors he worked with, not kids he could play with. There were no schoolyard games, no recess, just the harsh realities of the business. As he got older, the weight of fame began to feel more like a prison than a privilege. At 13, Ron found himself trapped in a role that defined him that the world refused to let him escape. Opie Taylor, the charming, innocent boy who had won America's heart, became a shackle. I didn't know who I was without that character. He later admitted a statement that revealed just how deeply the role had become intertwined with his identity. Ron's journey wasn't just about acting. It was about surviving an industry that doesn't easily let go of the past. When the show The Monroes failed after just 26 episodes, Ron felt the sting of Hollywood's cold judgment. He blamed himself, wondering if his time had already passed, if his future in the industry had already been written, and yet he picked himself up. When Happy Days came along, it seemed like a shed to escape the shadow of OP. But even then, Hollywood saw him as a supporting character. He wasn't a star of the world, was more interested in Fansa. Through all the doubts, through every door that closed, Ron refused to let go of his dream. He turned the pain into passion. Instead of letting the world's expectations define him, he defined himself. Behind every Rejection, behind every failed project, was a fire that kept burning, pushing him forward, fueling his ambition. When Ron turned to directing, it was a decision born not just out of necessity, but out of a deep desire to reshape his legacy. The shift wasn't easy. In the early 1980s, as had begun directing films like Night Shift and Splash, the industry didn't immediately embrace him. They doubted him, laughed at his ideas. But Ron pushed through. Splash was seen as a silly fantasy, but became a box office hit, proving to the world and himself that he was more than just Obie, more than just Richie Cunningham. As the years went on, his films like Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind became testaments to his vision to ability to transform personal struggle into artistic triumph. But as he found success, there were moments when the pressure seemed unbearable. With each success came the fear that it called all fall apart at any moment. And it did. In 1999, EDTV bombed at the box office. A painful blow to Ron's career. It was the first time he questioned everything about the foundation of his success, his identity. But that failure didn't break him. It forced him to reinvent himself, to push harder, to go deeper into his craft. It wasn't just about making movies anymore. It was about proving that he had more to offer, that his story wasn't over. His journey was marked by highs and lows, by moments of doubt and moments of unwavering belief. He built Imagine Entertainment, a company that would change the landscape television and film. But even that came with sacrifices. The pressure of overseeing so many projects took a toll, and the fear of allure never fully left. And then came Solo, a Star Wars story, a film that seemed destined for success, but instead became a public failure. The backlash was swift and brutal. For the first time in his career, Ron questioned if the industry still wanted him, if he had anything left to offer. But in the quiet moments after the storm, he found something remarkable. That he found the strength to keep going. Ron's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Through the failures, the losses, the doubts, Hen never stopped fighting. And when his latest film underperformed at the box office, it was another reminder that the road to greatness is never smooth. But Ron has learned that greatness isn't about the applause, the box office numbers, or the accolades, that it's about the courage to keep going, to keep telling stories even when the world stops clapping. Ron Howard's legacy isn't built on the successes we see. It's built on the quiet moments of perseverance, on the resilience to rise every time life knocks him down. It's about embracing the storms, finding meaning in the struggle, and proving that no matter how many times you fall, you can always get back up. And in that journey, Ron Howard isn't just a Hollywood icon. He's a symbol of what it means to truly endure. For Ron Howard, greatness wasn't about avoiding the storms. It was about walking through them. Even when the world thought he wouldn't make it, after surviving public doubts and financial blows, an old wound reopened. A wound that had been there long before Hollywood truly respected him. It wasn't about rivalry or betrayal, but the cold machinery of fame and the unspoken comparisons to Henry Winkler. In 1974, when Happy Days launched, Ron was at heart. At 19, Hua was America's steady son. Dire-haired, gentle guy everyone loved. But by 1975, everything shifted when Fona entered the scene. Henry Winkler, with his leather jacket and magnetic charisma, stole the spotlight. Suddenly, fan mail flooded in for Henry. Posters flew off the shelves. Magazine covers begged for him, and Ron, barely old enough to vote, was left feeling like his footing had slipped. Oh, wait. Our porter even asked him in 1976, how does it feel to be second place on your own show? Ron's smile never faltered, but internally it felt like a punch he saw coming too late. But here's the truth that people misunderstood for decades. Ron's pain was never about Henry. Henry never demanded more, never pushed Ron aside. He was humble, generous, and kind. The hurt came from the system, from the studios, from the way Famer shapes a young man's identity. Without permission, Ron admitted years later, I feel disrespected. Not by Henry, but by business. That was the wound that stuck with him. It wasn't losing the spotlight. It was being replaced in his own story. It dug deep, stayed long, and came back when he least expected it. Both ears were the miracle. Lies. While the world whispered about rivalry, Ron and Henry built something that couldn't be twisted by media. Loyalty. Henry didn't just stand by Ron on set, that he stood by him off set. 2. He became the godfather to all 4 of Ron's children. When Ron shifted from acting to directing, Henry never flinched. Hess supported him fully. And in 2002, when Ron won the Academy Award for A Beautiful Mind, Henry was backstage wiping away tears. He earned every bit off this, he whispered. In that moment, as Ron stepped into the spotlight, he realized that the last remnants of that old wound had finally healed. Their bond wasn't about competition. That it was about survival. That it was about 2 young men facing the unpredictable storm of fame. Choosing grace over ego, loyalty over fear, and truth over gossip. It's a lesson that anyone who's ever felt overshadowed or overlooked can understand. The world may choose a favorite, but the heart chooses its family. But Ron's story isn't just about fame. It's about the quiet pain of personal battles behind all the Ron wept with pride. They were broken, but they were whole accolades. There's a man who learned that even the harshest storms can be weathered when you have someone stand beside you. Ron's marriage, Cheryl, lasting more than 50 years, wasn't perfect. It was tested by time, by distance, and by the pressures of Hollywood. In the early days, when they were struggling in their tiny Los Angeles apartment, love was their foundation. It was a scent of burnt toast, Cheryl's ink-stained notebooks, and the joy of 2 dreamers building a life together when their children arrived. Bryce in 1981, the twins in 1985, Reed in 1987. But life has a way of testing even the strongest beams. After filming Far and Away in Ireland, Ron returned home to find his daughter hesitant, unsure the stranger who had walked through the door. That moment broke him. He realized That while he'd been chasing dreams, he had missed. Though many small moments. That should have been his, Cheryl. Meanwhile had been carrying the weight of raising their children alone, feeling abandoned by the very life they had built together. Their conversations turned sharp. Their silence is heavier. The pressures of their careers, financial losses, and the strain of an industry that demands more than it gives began to erode the foundation of their relationship. But despite the pain, they chose each other. They learned to share the way Ophir struggles. The numbers on the spreadsheets were painful, but the real pain came from the quiet fear that they might not make it through. In the darkest moments, when the losses seemed too much to bear, Cheryl would sit beside Ron and say, "Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates just like this."